center of Beijing when a man walked to the middle of the Avenue of Eternal Peace.
All right, welcome back to the Survival and Basic Badass Podcast, Kevin and Chuck. Today, well, we're talking about how to be prepared for everything. Because, that sounds doable, right? Um, I know, obviously, that sounds like a bit of a overwhelming task, but there is basic principles that I think need to be applied in everybody's life if you're going to kind of be the person who's successful. Have you ever noticed that some people crisis happens to them all the time? Like it's just they're a victim of the world. Like everything that could go wrong seems to go wrong for certain people. It just
Mhm.
happens that way. I don't know how that is, but it does. And it is possible that this could be the choices that you make each day. Like the choices that how you plan out your life. Sometimes when bad things happen to you, people don't realize, but there are signs that build up to that moment.
Mhm.
It it's not as blind. I kind of always thought like the fortune tellers. You can kind of just talk to people and know where their life is going.
Right.
And if you're a little intuitive, they talk about we all enjoy shows like Monk or Psych or different things like that where maybe you haven't seen these shows. I don't know, maybe you don't enjoy it. But I know at my house people watch these shows and it's just kind of you see people and you're like, "Oh, I know where this is going."
Mhm.
And it's just obvious that bad things kind of happen. So we're gonna kind of dig into it. Before we get too into it, uh, make sure you guys like and subscribe. It really helps out the channel, helps everything grow. We really appreciate it. So that would be great. But all right, the bottom line is as a prepper, it's almost impossible to take on everything and be like, oh God, I have to prepare for the economy collapsing. I have to prepare for an EMP happening. I have to prepare for a hurricane. I have to prepare for my kid's school dance. I have to prepare for, it's just everything going on in your life. It can be very overwhelming. And if you approach it like that, I think it would be very overwhelming. But I
Mhm.
don't think it has to be that way, and that's kind of the beauty of it, and that's what I, wanted to get into in this episode is it doesn't have to be that way for your life. Um, Basically, I best we're gonna apply it to principles. We're gonna, apply it to different situations in your life, and you'll start to understand what I'm talking about. But as life goes on, you need to kind of assess what's going on. So let's start like with the economy and your job and everything like that, right? Just what's going on in the world. So you get a newspaper every day, or I know nobody does really anymore, but you get your feed in Facebook or wherever it is that you get your news and information from. And to be honest, we get our information from people at work, right? You always hear people talking and what's going on. And you get a gist of, hey, the stock market's doing really well. Hey, the stock market is doing pretty bad. I'm a little scared about it. And you kind of have an idea of things coming just by paying attention a little bit. Sometimes you have to look up from your phone for a minute. Like if
Mhm.
you're just watching the cats jumping on counter feed, you might be missing some things.
That
Kevin, you
is
love
my
that one, right?
favorite. Yeah, that is my favorite cat videos on YouTube. That's it. Like 3 or 4 hours of my day every day.
Right? I have one of the kids is watching like chicken videos all
Chicken
the time.
videos. All
It's
right.
all about like chickens following people in the yard and whatever. It's like, hey, whatever, you do you, right?
Mhm.
But sometimes you have to pay attention to a little bit. So if we know now, how would we prepare to be like financially secure? Well, first of all, we need to have kind of a little cushion. We need to make choices in our life that hey, I make, we'll say $50,000 a year, or my household income is $50,000 a year. I need to come up with a budget that everything works for about 40,000 a year. So I
Mhm.
have a little extra to, set aside. We could even say 45,000 a year. And I know that gets tougher and tougher as the economy changes and, things go on in the world, obviously. But that's why you prepare that way. That's why you plan for that, because it is unexpected that grocery prices have gone up as much as they have in the last 5 years.
Mhm.
Now, I would argue we could have seen that in the way our politicians were making decisions, that, hey, they're spending out of control, they're printing money. And I gotta say, I feel like we had a long lead time, which almost, it lulled people into a false comfort where you're like, oh, they're printing money every day, but it hasn't killed me yet. It's one of those
Mhm.
things, it hasn't gotten that bad. And, but history kept telling us, well, if you keep printing money, we're going to have inflation.
Mhm.
And I know there were a bunch of news stories, and they were like, well, that printing money, you can print as much as you want, and that doesn't cause inflation. They had guys from Harvard. I saw guys from MIT that came out and were like, nope, don't worry. That has nothing to do with anything. And you can print as much money as you want. As long as things keep growing, we'll be okay. And that ended up not being the case, right? It
Nah,
turns
turns
out
out that was
there
not true.
is a little inflation. Now, somehow, but anybody who'd read books about history would be like, no, anytime an empire has done this, that would be Rome, that would be Russia, you just print more. And that's how it goes. And it gets away from you, and it can be a little concerning. So, what I'm saying is, you shouldn't have been blindsided by that. You can also choose to follow, news people that you like, or a podcast you like, right? Like, I'm always talking about different things going on in the future, AI and different things, try and keep people abreast of stuff. Now, obviously, I don't know everything. You shouldn't be getting all your information from me and Kevin. That would be a scary life if you just listen to me and Kevin. But if you listen to me and Kevin and three or four other trusted sources, plus take input from what you see and what's going on in your life, then I think you could really have a clear picture and be able to prepare. Now, so one, you should have some foresight of what's going on in the world. Think about your employer. Think about where you work, right? And that maybe you own your own business. Maybe you have a construction company. Maybe you have, you're a plumber. Now, certain things like plumbing, if I had a plumbing business and I was really focused and all my money came from new construction, I might be worried, like, hey, I don't know if people are going to be building more and more new buildings. Now, there are some areas of the country where that's still going on, but a lot of it's really slowing down. Um, but I would also say, hey, but people still need to get their, pipes snaked and faucets changed out. And I would look at shifting my business model into focusing on things where the economy's going. So I'm not necessarily blindsided by it. Um, I would maybe look at downsizing, and even if that was early on, I would look at, hey, this guy quit. Maybe I don't replace him. And because if you can do it kind of planned out from the future, now some employees, you're a great employer, maybe they never change over. And so you have to, make choices at some point. People also tend to let life happen to them where they carry people longer than they should, or they put up with a bad job longer than they should,
Mhm.
or, they accept the predicament.
I used to work with a guy that I swear he had 5 flat tires over the course of 3 weeks. And you know, we're not talking about real flat tires. We're talking about somebody that was just late for work all the time and needed an excuse. But it's one of those things. If you're that person that stays up playing video games till 3 in the morning and then have a hard time getting up for work, maybe you need to reassess your you know, the way you're running your life.
Yeah, exactly. Um, and that's the thing. A lot of people become victims of circumstance. And that's, something that you need to kind of prevent. So, anyway, so some core prepper principles that you might look at. Like what one of the first things me and Kevin always talk about when you start prepping is, hey, you should really have a 2 week supply of food in your house as the minimum, right? And you should have a little cushion nest egg. I know I've thrown out the amount like $1,000 set aside in cash that you built up over time set aside. Well, that's really going to help you if you lose your job, or maybe your friend loses their job and you can help out his family and bless them with a little bit of your stuff, whatever. But being having that cushion makes everything a whole lot less urgent, where you don't have to be in a full on panic. I think we all know those people in our lives who everything is a freaking crisis, and right over the edge all the time. It's like, oh my God, I got a flat tire and I can't afford it. And now I can't, or the battery went bad in my car and there's no way. But this same person who are riding around on bald tires, or the car battery, it happens, right? Car batteries die. I don't always know that you can predict that or whatever. Sometimes there is signs. I feel
Right.
like I notice things and I'm like, you know what, that's going to go any day. I can hear the way that car starts and whatever.
Hmm.
But just the same, even if we're not in a position where we're aware of that kind of thing, um it shouldn't throw you that hard. And a lot of the people who I see with these issues have a way nicer, newer car than I do. And I'm like, well, you picked the wrong car. You should have spent less. Or they live in a fancy apartment where they take care of everything for you. Well,
Hmm.
yeah, that's nice, to have an apartment building where I just, throw the bag in the trash dumpster right on the way out, and, things are easy, and,
Right. Maintenance guy
everything
shows up
works.
when I call him when something doesn't work
Right. I
right.
mean, that's awesome. But if that wipes out your budget completely, maybe that was not the right life choice for you.
Hmm.
So that's something to consider.
Yeah. Now, I mean, to further that point, though, I see that a lot with. I've got a trailer park down the street. Um,
Do
you
you
know,
live in the trailer park, Kevin?
I don't live in the trailer, but
Okay.
it's not that far from my house.
It's where all
And
your best friends live.
man, they have they have the nicest cars in that trailer park. I mean,
Oh, wait.
it probably leaks when it rains inside, but man, they got a nice looking late model car.
Yep.
And you know, I don't know. I mean, I guess you choose what you spend your money on, but I mean, there's a lot of I see a lot of people spending money on flashy things that they don't need at all, and then shorting themselves in other areas. You know?
Yeah. No, exactly. Um, no, it's crazy.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah. So let's talk about some basics of you know, things that you could do to streamline your life, make things a little bit easier, and have less unexpected events
Yeah.
popping up and getting you. Because you know, everybody, I think everybody agrees that you know, a car breaking down can be catastrophic. You know what I mean? If you
Yep.
need to just go out and buy a new car, your car is so messed up. Transmission just went 18 whatever, $8,000 you got to shell out now. That can be catastrophic, you know?
Yeah. All day.
Um, you know, there's I would say that, you know, your vehicle and your house, whether you rent, lease, whatever it is, those are the two primary things that you need to maintain to make sure that you're gonna be in an all right situation if things go sideways. Um, you know, and basic car maintenance. I don't have to tell you about basic car maintenance. Get your oil
No.
changed, and get your fluids checked, and like you said, changing out your tires when they're bald. Um, but we can go through a couple of steps. One of the things I would say is you don't have to spend a lot of money on a lot of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that we overspend on. If there's three things that you're going to spend money on, I would say it's a decent mattress, a good pair of shoes, and good tires. Things that
Like
separate you from the ground. And you know, maybe it is worthwhile for you to get snow tires during the winter. If you live in an area where you get, a decent amount of snow in the winter, get some get some snow tires. Switch them out every year. It's not that expensive. You get this set, and if you don't run those snow tires all damn summer, they're going to
there you go.
last you a few winters. A lot of people don't change them out. When
Right.
summer
They
comes, the
ride
hot
them.
asphalt will just tear those snow
Right.
tires up.
It does. And that's one of those things. So it definitely can get away from you. But there are basic preps for your car. And I like to be helpful as well as take care of my own stuff. But like with my vehicles, I have a can of fix a flat in all my vehicles, right? So if I see somebody, now I know that stuff kind of sucks. Nobody wants to
Kind
fill
of
your tire
sucks.
with, with crap, but it also sucks being on the side of a busy, super highway
Yep.
that, and you have to change your tire and you might die. It's probably better to not. And the thing is, I can also stop and help somebody who doesn't have a spare tire, who doesn't have whatever, and whatever they need to change their tire. And if I don't have a matching tire, I'm sure I'm probably not going to give my spare tire away, but I'm totally cool giving away a can of
Yeah.
fix a flat, and I can help you out. Now obviously fix a flat doesn't work in every instance, right? If they rode their tire down to bare nothing and
Hmm.
it just disintegrates as they're going, and then they get the flat tire and are like, I need to get out of here. So they stay driving for 5 miles on the highway and somehow don't take the first exit. They just keep going. Then, yeah, you might just have shreds that fix a flat isn't going to do anything.
Right.
Um,
Have you ever had to plug a tire after somebody put fix a flat in it?
it's not a fun treat.
That's nightmare. You get that sticky shit all over your hands,
Yeah,
man.
you do. But that's, I don't know. You could get a plug kit and a compressor. Now I have a truck that has like a little bit bigger tires, 'cause I'm a redneck and you know how it is, right?
Hmm.
You got a beard and you have to have a big tires and trucks and
Yep.
whatever. So I actually don't plan on changing a tire if I get a flat in that. One, I have big knobby tires that probably aren't going to go flat too easily, but obviously
Right.
anything's possible. I might get a
Hmm.
big nail, whatever. So what I do is I have a plug kit to fix it. I have an air compressor to fill it back up. I do have a spare tire and I have a can of fix a flat. Now I almost guarantee I'm not going to put that fix a flat in there,
Hmm.
but if I'm stuck, I do have that option, right? If some urgent, I need to go this second and the world's going to end if I don't, well, then I have an option. But it's not just car maintenance. I also have all my cars have jumper cables. Um, I'm not super rich, so I haven't been able to swing it yet, but I've been easing into it. I have one of those battery booster packs. I have that not in my truck, but I have it in the wife's car, and so she can carry that with her, and if she needs to start it, she's good to go. Now I'd like that in all my vehicles, but I haven't gotten there yet, so whatever, we still make choices, right, on what probability and all that, and I'm like, whatever, if I get stuck, I get stuck.
Hmm.
um a small toolkit, mine, in that vein, I have actually in my truck, I have a socket set, but in all the other cars, I have a crescent wrench and I have a flat and a Phillip, cross tip screwdriver, and I just keep those in there. Um, all my cars, I have a bug out bag. Actually, we have one that the wife just uses very local. That one doesn't have a bug out bag, but the other two do. And I have a first aid kit in all of them. And I have, in addition to a first aid kit, and that's like band-aids and neosporin and nonsense like that. The other bag, I have a trauma bag, which has tourniquets and things like that. Now, I set all that up. Now, obviously, day one, I get a car. I'm probably not spending that big budget. You're talking about probably $200 worth of stuff right there. But over time, I get that stuff in there. But once it's set up, I mean, now I'm at the point in life where I buy a new car. If I wanted, I could put that stuff in there, right? That'd be
Hmm.
okay. But um, but starting out, I understand that's maybe not feasible to just throw money at every problem. And there's easier ways to do it. You know, a $13 first aid kit and a $20 jumper cables takes you a long way, and a $10 can of fix a flat. Now you're in it for
Right.
like $40 and you got a lot, you know?
Hmm. Right.
But
You got
if I'm
most of your
making a
bases
long
covered
trip,
for an emergency.
I want that bug out bag if I'm gonna be more than an hour away from my house, or not, I say bug out bag, I have a get home bag, like a
Hmm.
72-hour bag. But also, if I was on a really tight budget, maybe I would throw a case of water in the car before my trip, and I would a couple other things that I know would be essential, right?
Hmm.
And, if I didn't already have a prepared bag that was gonna get me what I need. Um, anyway, once I have all this set up, there are 2 things I need to do. One, about once a year, I'm gonna go check those things. I'm gonna go spend 10 minutes and go through the car. Hey, everything's here. I open up the bag. The water didn't freeze and explode in everything, or the band-aids didn't get all stuck together where they're completely useless. I don't know how that happens, but somehow it does. Um, and all that stuff. I'm gonna go through for 10 minutes once a year, and I'm gonna check it. Now, the key to that, you would have to check it more often unless you remember one key rule of when you use stuff, you replace stuff, right? When you know what? I used that battery booster to help somebody and I didn't plug it back in and charge it back up. Well, but you need to remember that. That's part of the rule. But once a year, that 10 minutes, you're going to check, hey, is that charged up? Is that holding the charge? Everything good? All right, cool. Hey, the fixed flat's still there. Nobody touched it. We're good. All right. And then you move on. And that's it. And then it's low maintenance and low budget. It's not costing me $150 a year to maintain this. It's just a one time thing. And then I'm good for 20 years of life.
Right.
Now, obviously, that first aid kit might not last 20 years, but after 5 years, I buy another $13 first aid kit. Or maybe even better, I need to buy $3 worth of stuff to just replace those couple of items that got damaged,
Hmm.
right? So that's how you approach things. Same thing with my house, right? So people always, oh, a tree fell on my house and took out my car and I'm the victim and whatever. Now, obviously, we just had some hurricanes here and there's another one coming and a lot of things going on like that. But you need to walk around your property and say, "Hey, do I have dead trees? Do I have dead limbs that are just hanging right over my house and look really bad?" Hopefully, you're the kind of guy that can handle it yourself. Now, cool guy like me, I have some trees in my yard that if they were dead and crappy, I wouldn't even touch them. I'd be like, you
Hmm.
know what? I got to call somebody. And as things start to go south, I would start to prepare my budget to deal with that, you know, and see if I could find somebody. Now, how hard I'm gonna shop around to get somebody, it depends on my budget, right? What's your time worth? If I'm on a really tight budget, I'm gonna talk to a lot of people and I'm gonna see where I can squeeze every penny and get the best deal. Now, we are supposed to be good stewards of what we have, right? I mean that's kind of a good motto to live your life, is to not be wasteful. But just the same, if you get a fair price, you go with it, and you accept it, assuming it fits your budget.
Hmm.
Maybe you have to call a buddy and whatever. Maybe I don't know. I have buddies who have like a boom truck. Like, I mean, there's always something, you could
Yeah.
do. Maybe you should be nicer to people and you'd have better buddies. Maybe
Yeah.
that's the
Well, I
Kevin.
mean,
Yeah,
that's
that's
not a
not gonna
trade-off
happen
I'm
for
willing to
you.
make.
Yeah, that's that's an ugly road to go down. But
No, but I
that's
mean, there comes there comes a point where, and everybody knows these people, that have a bucket underneath their sink because it leaks every time they run it. You know,
yes.
uh, they have a leak and a wet spot on their ceiling, but only when it really rains. So, it's just a little discoloration. It'll be fine. That sort of stuff is like, you really like walking a fine line there of like,
That's
catastrophic failure in your life if that's the
That's
type
it.
of shit you're ignoring.
Well, you guys know me. I'm kind of a do-it-yourself kind of guy, and even in New York, I had a reasonably flat roof, and I'd be up there replacing shingles, and that roof was pushing the 30-year mark, and every time we'd have a storm, I'd lose like 3 or 4 shingles off the top, and
Uh-huh.
mind you, I had a package of shingles that I kept around, and I'd climb up there and I'd bang them in and do it, and so the house I'm in now, once again, somehow I managed to buy another house with a questionable roof. And
Uh-huh.
again, both houses built in 92 and both houses rocking the 92 roof,
The same
which
roof, huh?
that sounds like more than 30 years, but
Yeah,
we
it's a
won't
bit of a
talk
stretch
about how
there.
math works.
Yeah.
But so I would let that go, and this one and the same thing. If like we get like full on like hurricane rain, it would drip a little bit, and I'd be like, yes, I'm gonna have to do something.
Mhm.
And so this last, like, I don't, I think it was even right before Debbie here, we had a couple of storms, and it would drip, and I'd be like, oh yeah. So I climbed up there, and that's the thing though. So the house I had before had a reasonable pitch roof.
Mhm.
Now it's like freaking, 45-degree angle or something. And I'm like, yeah, I don't really want to walk on that. Like actually, if it was a true 45, you can just kind of lean the ladder and go all the way right to the top.
Mhm.
But
Right.
no, mine's like one of those stupid like Dutch barn like roofs where you have a steep angle and then it angles. And the top angle is also very steep that I don't want to be walking on. I
Yeah.
go up there, there's a bunch of shingles that are like just ripped up and crappy. And I'm like, I need to do it. And I go out, I climb on there. And of course, when they're old and sun baked and whatever, you know how they get like really gravelly and you're
Right, and
slipping
they
and
they they
sliding
wanna
on
just roll
everything.
from under your feet.
Yeah. And I'm like, you know what? I don't think I need to die for this. I'm probably at the point where I'm ready to commit.
Uh-huh.
And I called around and it ended up, in my mind, not that bad, right? Relative to the price of the house, replacing the roof is not that big of a deal. And actually, I found out a way. It was cool because I don't have any credit cards, and I, made choices in my life over and over to get away from all that.
Mhm.
But I also pay my mortgage hard. I hate giving them extra interest money and whatever. And so I have very little cash on hand. It's funny because I pretty close where I probably could have covered the roof budget out of the cash on hand. But if
Mhm.
I give that out, then I don't have any cash on hand. And the
Right.
next emergency, it just, it worries me. I get a little peace of mind from having a little money in the bank. Right.
Mhm.
So with that, what I did is I was talking to people at work and they were like, "Oh, you can borrow money out of your 401k." And I'm like, "What? Tell me more." Now, mind you, this could just be my employer, right? Like
Yeah. It
I
is
don't
it's
know.
most employers.
You
It
can
is
do
most
this? Okay.
employers. Yeah.
So I look at it. So it's $100 fee and they charge 9.5% interest. And you're like, "Oh my God, Chuck, that's pretty crappy." But wait, work with me. 9.5% interest that you pay back to yourself.
Right.
So
So
it's
you
like
get
I'm
the interest.
making 9.5%.
Right.
You can set the term and whatever. So I get paid every other week and I set it up that it would be like 170 bucks every paycheck for 30 weeks and ends up costing me like, I don't know, like 12 grand or something, and I get my roof, and in 30, sorry, not 30 weeks, it's 30 months, it'll be all paid off and whatever. And I feel like that isn't going to cripple my budget and whatever. And I'm paying interest to myself. And I'm like, oh, with the market going crappy, that kind of works out. But I don't know. It's a
Yeah.
crazy world. But bottom line is, I'm gonna get a new roof, right? I called the guy. I said, you know what? Let's do it. Let's get it done. I was actually surprised the price was better than I thought it would be because it's a big roof, it's a steep angle and whatever. And
Mhm.
he's like, yeah, I'll put a fancy metal roof on. You'll be cool, like the cool kids
Ooh,
in
that is
town.
fancy.
Yeah, like rich people. And he's like, but know that if you get the metal roof, you're not really climbing up there because you'll dent it and it'll look like crap. And
Yeah, I was actually doing some pricing for some roofs for a friend, not me
yeah,
doing the job. I mean, getting prices
yeah,
from contractors.
mhm.
And I talked to this one guy. He said, "Call this person. He's great because he'll just show up with like 30 Guatemalans, and they'll just strip that house and have it reshingled in a day."
Yep.
And I was like,
That's
"Yeah,
it.
yeah,
Most places, it's a
that's the
day
way to
or
go."
2. And yeah,
Yeah, but all right, yeah. So we're talking about house maintenance.
alright,
Um, let's talk about a couple of basics of things you need to keep up with aside of your roof. We talked about plumbing.
right.
Let's get those leaks fixed pretty quick. The worst thing you can do to your house is have water damage. Whether it's leaking from a sink or it's leaking from your roof, it ain't no good. Long term, that will destroy everything in your house.
Yes. And
Um,
that's the thing, ignoring, yeah, any water damage, like you said, it really destroys it and makes your house worthless. Um,
mhm,
you run the risk inside of mold and that kind of thing. Now, I'm not saying every mold is the end of the world like they react on these shows,
mhm.
but it also really can start to spread and do horrible damage, you know?
Right,
So,
right. You get a little bit of dry rot and a little bit of wood inside your house, and man, give that a year or two, and
yeah,
you're gonna be replacing entire walls. Um, but one of the other big dangers in your house is fires, electrical fires, grease fires. The stuff that can get out of control real fast. Things that start out as a small issue can become real dangerous real fast, and just I think it's not crazy to just buy a small fire extinguisher for your kitchen, for grease fires. That's maybe you're not an idiot. Maybe you don't ever get into a situation where you're going to have a grease fire. But do you have kids? Kids are fucking stupid. I don't know if you guys know this, but if you have kids, you probably know. They're stupid and they do stupid shit all the time. And they see a fire and they want to go splash water on it. And now you got a serious problem, you know? Um, Having a small fire extinguisher, near your stove, under your sink, wherever it is, easily accessible, is a smart investment. It doesn't cost that much to get a small fire extinguisher. You're looking at
right.
30, 40, $50, you know.
And
Um
that's it. It's, smoke detectors, fire extinguisher, stuff you buy one time and then you check it every year, 10 minutes. Go through. Hey, I should check all my smoke detector batteries, make sure, most of them are hardwired anyway anymore, newer houses. But
mhm.
you go through and you check the charge on your fire extinguisher, right? Not just that it's there, but that it's
Yep.
actually got
Yep. And
pressure.
and most businesses stuff, they have it inspected once a year and you should be checking it once a month, blah blah blah. If it's in your house, just take a look at it when you're walking past it. Have it, you know, there's a gauge where it should be between, and most fire stations will charge that up for you. It's just compressed air. The stuff that's in there that puts the fire out is not going anywhere. It just needs to be pressurized. Where How do you put out a fire with a fire extinguisher? Spray at the base of the fire. Don't just try and spray the whole fire down. Spray where the fire is coming from. That's fire extinguisher 101.
Yeah, and that's one of the other things is training, right? How many, as we grow and mature into adults and functional members of society, you should be stepping up your game, right? Hey, you know, I haven't done any good training this year. Let me go do a first aid class and
Hmm.
learn something. Let me do some kind of home maintenance class. I mean, I know I've been to a few classes where they've taught me how to use a fire extinguisher, right? Throughout
Hmm.
life. I don't know, Boy Scouts or, at work, we actually did one where we, used a fire extinguisher, different things, that goes on. Um, but using a firearm, right? Hey, take a class, step up your game a little bit, get out of your comfort zone. Um, then step up into some kind of preparedness class, some kind of shooting class, some kind of tactical awareness class, all these different things, a car maintenance class, right? How much would that help you? Some kind of basic, learn to fix your house kind of class. Now, obviously, I'm not saying, a lot of people, you grow up in a world where you're doing, maintenance with your parents or whatever. That's cool. But some of us don't have that training. I learned all kinds of carpentry and plumbing growing up, but I didn't learn anything about firearms or car maintenance,
Hmm.
and then it was funny. I ended up having friends whose dads were all into car maintenance, and I got into that and, started to figure that stuff out. But take a class, just keep growing. And maybe it doesn't have to be a class. I know you guys are saying, "Hey, I don't like people." I'm with you, right? I get that. So maybe you start paying attention on YouTube. Hey, let me dig into how this works. I have some friends, I used to give them grief because they research the hell out of everything, but they really dig down into understanding. And my friends who are like that are some of the most knowledgeable guys out there. And they just, hey, I don't really know how that works. And instead of just accepting, oh, this is how a cylinder works and, things go back and forth and whatever, I researched that and I know how that works. One, people don't take advantage of you when you understand how things work. And
Hmm.
two, you start to recognize problems, one, before they happen because you see bad designs and bad setup, but you also learn how to deal with it and how to correct problems. And that's really the gist of, what I wanted to talk about is, just how do you prepare for the unexpected, the everything? Because you can't just be a victim and let life happen to you. You need to learn to look and recognize what's going on. Now, there are certain cores, certain principles that I think apply to everything. And one of them is, right, we need to have some kind of security. And security could be, learning how to use a firearm to protect your family from physical threats. Another one would be like, how do I keep my house from dead trees falling on it, right? Both are, in a way, security, right? Because you're paying attention on how to protect your stuff or you
Right.
or your family. These principles apply in everything. Security to your budget, right? How do I keep from getting scammed? What kind of research do I do that somebody's not going to rip me off? Am I paying attention to, hey, what's happened before? Do I fall for every ad that I see in Facebook and like, oh, well, that's a good idea. She can teach me how to, get pretty girls or,
Hmm.
whatever. Well, that's fine. Like they do the research, and if like, hey, 5 of my buddies have done that and they all have pretty girlfriends, then maybe that's worth your $50, right?
Hmm.
Then that
Right.
works out. But if it's just another thing or the next pill to lose weight or the next thing, you know, let the other people do it first and then jump on board. That's all I'm saying. Do a little homework, and if you feel that you keep getting duped over and over again, then maybe start to slow down
Hmm.
and step up your radar. And even if that means, you know what, maybe I should go get counsel from my buddy before I spend my money on this. Of course, a lot of the things are always the big embarrassing thing, like how to grow 2 inches or whatever. And you're
Hmm.
like, well, I don't want to go to my buddy about that, and whatever. But
I've
it
never
probably
had that
doesn't
issue, so
work,
I can't help you out with that one.
right? You know, but the bottom line is what I'm saying is pay attention and
Hmm.
try not to fall for the same stuff. But that security is all around, right? Do I have dead limbs and leaves and filled with snakes and fire hazards and everything all around my house? Or do I rake it up and, look out for things, right? Take care.
Hmm.
Now, some of it is more effort than we want to put out. And I get that. And maybe that means you shouldn't buy the 100-acre property. Maybe that means you buy the condo in town where somebody cuts your grass. That's
Hmm.
okay, right? But you got to find what you're willing to give because everybody's like, oh, well, this is so hard for me. Well, you kind of have to make the choices in the beginning to get there. And I
Hmm.
understand we don't all have a lot of choices in the beginning,
Yeah.
but you should start to build your life to where you're in control. And
Right.
that's what
And
I'm getting at.
yeah, and doing the hard thing is 9/10 of the problem. I don't feel like doing that today. I'm tired. Yeah, we're all tired. We're all tired all the time. You're a grown man living in America, taking care of a family. Yeah, that's how it is. You're always tired. Sleep faster. I don't know what to tell you. You know what I mean? Nobody likes to, you know, come home every day after work and go through all the fucking bills and look at the bank account and pull your hair out. But that's helpful. That's good for your bottom line.
Nobody
Being
wants to
stressed
go
out
to
about
bed.
money a little bit. Spend some
Whatever.
time being stressed out. Don't just
Yeah.
ignore it. A lot of those issues where it's like, not today. I'm tired. I don't feel like this. I can't deal with this right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you're not going to want to deal with it next week either. You know what I mean? It's
So
that
many
sort of
people.
stuff. That sort of stuff
Yeah.
gets out of hand real fast if you ignore it.
So many people let things get out of hand because they don't want to confront it.
Mhm.
And it's, I don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, or I don't want to, that's going to be an uncomfortable conversation for me and them. How do I avoid that? And they just put it off and procrastinate. Or even like you said, I just don't want to go rake the yard because it's hot out and it's whatever. I don't want to cut the grass because it's still a little wet and I'd rather not do it that way. And the rain that I've had for the last like month, I'm like, it's not raining right now. I'm going to go
Right.
cut grass because that was the only way it was going to happen. Right? I mean, and that's just what it is. And I'm out there and I can hear 3 of my neighbors out cutting the grass, and the grass was way too wet and it's going to look a little crappy and it's going to
Mhm.
suck,
Some
but it's going
tire
to be
skid
way
marks.
better than when it's 1.5 feet high and the wife's like kicking through the snakes to get out of the yard,
Mhm.
and that's what you need to do. So sometimes make the hard choices, but I got to say, if you're a little preemptive, it will actually end up paying off and being better at the end, right? Like your life will be easier in general because instead of high stress and emergency and band-aids, you'll end up fixing things more properly. And I understand budget doesn't always allow, but we're just trying to make choices to get there and get closer each day, move in the right direction. I don't expect anybody to be perfect, but I expect that if you keep making better choices, you will get there where your life starts to go smoother and smoother and you'll have less stress in your life. And that's what I'm going for. So if you found it helpful and you made it all the way to the end, I appreciate it. And we'd love if you like and subscribe, leave reviews on iTunes, YouTube, Spotify, wherever you are. We love it. We appreciate the feedback. Questions, concerns, email us at preppingbadass@gmail.com. Otherwise, I would say we really appreciate you. And don't forget, Prepper Camp, end of September. You guys could meet the badass. Could be great. And with that, stay safe, and we'll talk to you guys next week.